The late afternoon sun spilled through my kitchen window, glinting off the polished oak cabinets I'd installed myself 40 years ago. I was pouring coffee into my favorite navy mug, the one with "World's Best Grandpa," faded from decades of use, when the phone rang. "Hey, Dad," came the voice of my son, Michael. It had that same tone I recognized from his teenage years, the one that meant he was about to ask for something costly. "Hello, son," I answered evenly. "How's everything?" "That's why I'm calling," he said, clearing his throat. "We need $8,000 to cover the rest of the cruise tickets. The deposit's paid, but the travel agent needs the balance by Monday." I set the mug down harder than I meant to, a splash of hot coffee staining the granite counter. "Michael, you're 42 years old, married with a family. Pay for your own vacation." "Dad, come on," he said, his voice rising in that practiced whine. "This is for your retirement celebration, time for us all to be together. You're worried about money?" I walked to the living room window, watching my neighbor Mrs. Fletcher trim her rose bushes. "I'll pay for Emma's ticket," I said firmly, referring to my 10-year-old granddaughter. "She shouldn't miss out because her parents can't manage their budget." There was a pause, then his tone hardened. "Fine. But don't blame me when Emma asks why her grandpa wouldn't let her parents join the cruise." The line went dead. I stood there, staring at the receiver, wondering how my once loving son had turned into someone so manipulative. 2 hours later, I heard a car in the driveway. Michael's dented silver SUV idled there, his wife, Vanessa, sitting stiffly in the passenger seat. They didn't knock, just let themselves in with the spare key I'd given them years ago. "Dad, we need to talk," Vanessa said first, her mascara smudged as if she'd been crying. Michael followed, pacing the living room like he owned it, picking up family photos and setting them down without care. Vanessa perched on the edge of the armchair, clutching her designer purse. "We're not asking for vacation money," she began, her voice quivering just enough to seem rehearsed. "We're drowning in debt, 50,000. Credit cards, loans, the mortgage is behind. Michael's commissions got cut, and we just fell behind." 50,000? I repeated, the figure hitting me like a punch. "How did it get that bad?" "It doesn't matter," Michael snapped. "What matters is fixing it. We can consolidate everything with a personal loan, but we need you to co-sign. Your house as collateral." Vanessa dabbed her eyes. "And the $8,000 for the cruise fits into the plan. It'll keep things normal for Emma. She's been asking why I cry so much." When Michael leaned closer and said, "If we can't afford to go, maybe Emma should stay home too," I felt my blood run cold. Using my granddaughter as leverage was a new low. "Don't you dare," I said quietly. "Use that little girl to manipulate me." But the truth was, he'd already won. I couldn't bear the thought of Emma suffering for her parents' failures. I went to my desk, pulled out the checkbook, and wrote the amount, hands shaking. "This is the last time," I told him. He barely glanced at it before tucking it into his wallet. "Thanks, Dad. Means everything." The front door clicked shut behind them, leaving the house feeling violated. Outside, their SUV roared to life. $8,000 for a week trapped at sea with people who saw me as nothing more than a wallet with a pulse. That night, as I pulled my old leather suitcase from the closet, the same one my late wife and I had taken on our honeymoon, I found a folder of old financial papers. Receipts for Michael's wedding, his down payment, his emergency car repairs. The total over the years came to nearly $300,000. And tomorrow, I'd be boarding a ship with him. Morning arrived with the kind of bright, crisp air that makes you feel the day might hold something special. Michael's SUV pulled into my driveway right on time, its engine coughing like it needed the same financial rescue he did. Emma bounded out, clutching a worn paperback of Anne of Green Gables. "Grandpa, look! I'm bringing this for the cruise." "Do you think they have a library on board?" I'm sure they do, sweetheart, I said, fastening her seatbelt and avoiding Michael's eyes in the rearview mirror. Vanessa twisted in the front seat to look at me, her manicured nails drumming on the door panel. Every so often she'd catch my gaze and give a smile that never reached her eyes. The tension in that vehicle was thick enough to slice with a butter knife. As we crossed into downtown Miami, Emma pressed her face against the window. Grandpa, look! The buildings are like a giant glass forest. That's the skyline, Princess, I told her. That tall one over there is the Freedom Tower. It's been here since your great-grandfather's day. Was he alive when dinosaurs were? She asked with wide-eyed wonder. I chuckled. Not quite that far back. Traffic thickened as we neared the port. Michael's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Vanessa broke the silence with her brand of sugar-coated venom. Money can't buy love, can it, Walter? Emma turned sharply. I love Grandpa no matter what. He's the best grandpa in the world. That simple, fierce loyalty warmed me like nothing else could. Michael's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The salt air hit us before the ship came into view. When it finally appeared, 15 stories of gleaming white hull rising above the pier, Emma's jaw dropped. It's not a ship, she whispered. It's a floating castle. 3,000 passengers, 1,500 crew. I told her, squeezing her hand. Inside the terminal, a crisp uniformed steward greeted us. Mr. Walter Harris, party of 4. Your Ocean View suite is on deck 9. Mr. Michael Harris, your interior cabin is on deck 5. The color-coded keycards told the whole story, mine gold-edged, theirs plain white. Michael shoved his into his pocket, pretending not to notice. When Emma and I stepped into our suite, she gasped at the floor-to-ceiling windows. Grandpa, come see. There's the lighthouse. She pulled me onto the balcony, her hair whipping in the ocean breeze. For the first time since Michael's call, I felt a flicker of peace. Lunch in the grand dining hall was a blur of clinking glasses and cheerful chatter. Emma's attention was soon claimed by the kids' club, video games, art tables, even a rock-climbing wall. She chattered about water slides and snorkeling as we reunited later in the library, where she found me absorbed in a detective novel. That evening, we strolled the deck as the Miami skyline shrank into the horizon. Emma ran ahead to peer over the rail, laughing at the spray on her face. I let the wind carry away the heaviness that had followed me for weeks. But peace never lasts long when certain people are involved. The next afternoon, as the sun dipped low, I was reading on the upper deck when I heard running footsteps. Emma's voice cracked with panic. Grandpa. She barreled toward me, face pale and eyes wide. I dropped my book. What's wrong, Princess? She clung to me, her voice barely above a whisper. You have to stay away from Mom and Dad. I heard them in their cabin. They're going to put something in your drink at dinner. To make you sleepy? My stomach lurched. And then? She looked away. They said they'd push you over the railing. So it looks like an accident. The ship seemed to tilt beneath my feet. My own son. Planning my death. Are you sure about this? I asked quietly. She nodded fiercely. They even talked about the security shift change, 9:30 p.m. They planned it. I hugged her tightly. You're very brave, Emma. Here's what we'll do. You go to movie night in the kids' club and stay there until I come get you. Don't go near their cabin. What about you? She asked, eyes filling with tears. Let me worry about that, I said, forcing a reassuring smile. Sometimes the best way to catch someone is to let them think their plan is working. As the dinner bells rang, I sent her off to the kids' club, her yellow sundress disappearing into the crowd. Below decks, Michael and Vanessa were likely getting ready for what they thought would be my last meal. They had no idea I was already preparing the trap. I sat in the Ocean View lounge, a dimly lit bar with mahogany tables and a soft jazz trio in the corner. My back was to the wall, giving me a clear view of the entrances. A ginger ale sat untouched in front of me, condensation pooling on the coaster. My phone lay on the table, the voice recorder app running silently. "Dad!" Michael's voice boomed across the room with a cheerfulness so forced it was almost comical. He and Vanessa approached with bright smiles, their eyes scanning the room like predators checking for witnesses. "Mind if we join you?" Vanessa didn't wait for an answer before sliding into the chair opposite me. Her perfume was cloying, heavy, like she'd bathed in it to mask something sour underneath. "Of course," I said smoothly. Michael signaled the bartender. "3 martinis, Grey Goose, extra dry. Just like Dad always orders." That sent a shiver up my spine. I'd never been particular about brands, and he knew it. "Actually," I said, feigning a grimace, "I think I'll stick to ginger ale tonight. Bit of queasiness from the waves." Michael's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Come on, Dad. 1 martini won't hurt." Vanessa leaned in, voice dripping with false warmth. "Who knows when we'll have another moment like this together?" I chuckled as if amused. "True. But my sea legs aren't what they used to be. You two go ahead, I'll meet you in the dining room after a short walk to settle my stomach." I dropped enough cash on the table to cover their drinks and stood, giving them no chance to argue. Behind me, I heard Michael's frustrated sigh and Vanessa's hiss. "He's being difficult." Instead of heading to the elevators, I slipped down the corridor toward Deck 5. Their cabin door was slightly ajar, just enough for voices to filter through. I pressed my phone against the wall and hit record. "He knows," Vanessa said sharply. "Nobody refuses a drink like that without a reason." "You're paranoid," Michael muttered. "We'll just do it during his nightly deck walk, like we planned. Patrol shift changes at 9:30. 15 minutes with minimal security." "Push him over," Vanessa said flatly. "Slippery rail, dark night, no one will question it. Insurance pays out, and in 6 months we're set." I'd heard enough. Back in my cabin, I replayed the recording 3 times, each playback colder than the last. The life jacket in my closet caught my eye, bright orange, ready to keep a man afloat. They thought they were hunting a helpless old man. They had no idea the old man was hunting them. That night, while the ship anchored off Nassau, I stood at the rail watching the twinkling lights on shore. In my pocket was the voice recorder. In my mind was a single thought: I can walk away right now, or I can end this for good. The next morning, the decision came for me. Emma found me at breakfast, her smile returning only when I told her we'd be spending the day together. "Just us?" she asked, hope lighting her eyes. "Just us, Princess." But I knew I couldn't simply avoid them forever. They'd try again, and maybe next time, they'd succeed. I needed a plan, one that didn't just protect me, but also made sure Emma would never be in danger from her own parents again. That meant going to someone with authority. By mid-morning, the majestic horizon had pulled away from Nassau, the turquoise waters fading into deep blue. I'd barely slept the night before, my mind replaying Emma's frightened face and Michael's recorded words over and over. When we docked in Bermuda the following day, I stood on the sunlit deck with my small escape bag in hand. Inside were my passport, some cash, and the audio proof of my son's plot. I could have walked off, taken the first flight back to Florida, and gone straight to the police. But then Emma appeared in her yellow sundress, skipping toward me with a smile that could melt icebergs. She clutched my hand. "You promised we'd go snorkeling together, Grandpa." And just like that, my escape plan dissolved. If I left, she'd be trapped on board with them, 2 people already proven capable of murder. They might decide a 10-year-old witness was too dangerous to keep alive. I knelt to meet her eyes. "You're right, Princess. I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together." Michael and Vanessa emerged from the ship moments later, dressed for their own shore excursion. Michael forced a cheerful tone. Not coming ashore, Dad? Bermuda's beautiful. Changed my mind, I said, leaning on the rail. Thought I'd enjoyed the ship while it's quiet. Their eyes met briefly, a silent recalculation. Then they walked down the gangway, leaving me with 3 precious hours before they returned. That was when I made the call. Ship security, this is Chief Officer Daniel Brooks. A steady voice answered after 2 rings. My name's Walter Harris, Cabin 9A, I said. We need to meet. It's about passenger safety, serious threats from 2 individuals on board. He didn't hesitate. Come to the security office on deck 3 in 10 minutes. The office was small but efficient, with maps of the ship and CCTV monitors covering every angle of the decks. Brooks was mid-30s, sharp-eyed, and gave the impression of someone who'd seen more than his share of trouble at sea. Tell me what's going on, he said. I set my phone on his desk and hit play. Michael's voice filled the room. Push him over, insurance will pay out, 15 minutes without security. Brooks listened twice, his jaw tightening. That's attempted murder conspiracy. We can confine them to quarters right now. No, I said firmly. If you do that, Emma loses her parents forever. She's just a child. This isn't about revenge, it's about making sure they can never hurt her or me again. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. What do you have in mind? They think they know my habits. I take an evening walk on the upper deck at 11:30. Let them think tonight's the night. You and your team will be waiting. Brooks frowned. You're asking us to use you as bait. I'm 68, I said. I can't outfight them, but I can outthink them. This way, we catch them in the act. No more chances for them to try again. We spent the next hour planning the sting. 2 officers would be hidden near the lifeboat station, another near the deck entrance. I'd carry a small whistle in my pocket, 1 sharp blow if I needed them immediately. And Emma? Brooks asked. She'll be at the kids' movie night until midnight. She won't even know this is happening. Before I left, he shook my hand. Mr. Harris, in my years at sea, I've seen plenty of family disputes, but never a grandfather risking himself like this for a grandchild. Sometimes, I said quietly, being a father means making impossible choices. Being a grandfather means you make them anyway. That evening, in my suite, I wrote a letter to Emma. It contained everything she'd need if things went wrong, contact information for my lawyer, instructions to access her college fund, and 1 final note telling her how much she was loved. I sealed it, placed it in the desk drawer, and stepped out onto the balcony. The sunset painted the Atlantic in gold and crimson. In less than 6 hours, I'd either be in my cabin sipping tea, or at the bottom of the ocean. One thing was certain, I wouldn't be running anymore. By 11:20 p.m., the majestic horizon was a world of soft shadows and ocean whispers. Most passengers had retreated to their cabins, the late-night stragglers scattered between the casino and the piano lounge. The upper deck, where my part of the plan would unfold, lay quiet under a blanket of stars. I checked my reflection in the cabin mirror, hair combed, cardigan buttoned, the picture of a harmless retiree out for fresh air. In my right pocket, the small emergency whistle pressed cold against my palm. In my left, my phone, its screen dark but voice recorder ready. When I stepped onto the deck, the cool wind bit at my face. The ocean was a black mirror stretching into forever, the faint glow of the ship's lights bouncing off gentle swells. I walked to the predetermined spot along the starboard rail, hands clasped behind my back, staring into the night as though lost in thought. Unseen by anyone but me, Officer Brooks stood hidden near the lifeboat station, his team spread at other vantage points. Dad, came Michael's voice from behind me. Too casual. Too late at night for chance encounters. I turned slowly to see both him and Vanessa approaching. They wore dark clothing, black pants, navy windbreakers, blending almost perfectly with the night. Their eyes flicked around the empty deck before settling on me. Couldn't sleep, I said mildly. Sometimes the ocean helps clear my mind. You should be careful walking out here alone, Vanessa said, her tone falsely sweet. The rails can be slick with sea spray. Michael moved to my right, Vanessa to my left, flanking me, subtly nudging me backward toward the railing. Their movements were smooth, practiced. They thought this through. Balance isn't what it used to be, is it, Dad? Michael's smile didn't reach his eyes. I straightened, meeting his gaze. My balance is fine. So's my hearing. I heard everything last night. The martini, the shift change, the plan to make it look like an accident. Michael's face went pale in the starlight. You're imagining things. No, I said firmly. I know exactly what you're doing. And you've made one mistake, thinking I'd go quietly. His jaw tightened. His hand shot forward, gripping my arm. We're just making sure you're safe, he hissed. The whistle was in my mouth before he could tighten his hold. The shrill blast cut through the night like a siren. Security! Security! From the shadows, Officer Brooks stepped into the light, his voice steady. Step away from Mr. Harris. Now. Two more officers appeared from opposite ends of the deck, flashlights cutting across the scene. Michael's grip loosened instantly. This isn't what it looks like, Vanessa said quickly, raising her hands. We were helping him back inside. He was feeling dizzy. Brooks's tone was ice. Turn around. Hands behind your backs. This is entrapment. Michael barked as the cuffs went on. No, I said quietly. This is you finally getting caught. Vanessa glared at me over her shoulder as the officers led them toward the deck entrance. You think you've won? This isn't over. I didn't answer. I just watched the two of them disappear into the ship's interior, swallowed by the dim corridor lights. The night air felt different now, lighter somehow. I'd come within inches of being another tragic headline, elderly passenger lost at sea. Instead, I was still here, and they were in handcuffs. But my work wasn't over yet. I still had to decide what to do with them, and what that meant for Emma. 45 minutes after the arrest, I sat in the ship's small security office, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead, and the faint vibration of the engines beneath my feet. Through the thin wall, I could hear Michael's angry voice, alternating with Vanessa's sharper, more calculated tone. Officer Brooks sat across from me, typing into a report on a widescreen monitor. Mr. Harris, we'll need to notify the next port authority. Nassau Police can meet us, take statements, and charge them formally. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the floor. The logical part of me knew that was the safest, cleanest route. Get the law involved, let them face the consequences. But the thought of Emma watching her parents dragged off in handcuffs made my chest tighten. What happens to my granddaughter if they're arrested? I asked. Brooks hesitated. With both parents in custody, she'd be placed in protective services until the courts decide who gets guardianship. Could be weeks. Could be months. Weeks or months in some foster home, wondering why her grandpa let this happen. I pictured her at breakfast, hair still damp from the pool, chattering about seashells and snorkeling. No, I said finally. We're not going to hand her that trauma if we can avoid it. Brooks studied me carefully. You're telling me you want to let them go? Not exactly. Confine them to their cabin for the rest of the voyage. Meals brought to them, no interaction with other passengers. Keep them isolated until we dock in Miami. His brow furrowed. That's not justice, Mr. Harris. It's prevention, I said quietly. They failed. I'm alive. And I'll make sure they never get near me, or Emma, again once we're off this ship. From the holding room, Michael's voice carried through the wall. He's lying. You've got no proof Brooks cut the sound by closing the interior door. You realize this means no criminal record for them? They could walk away free. I've spent my life in business negotiations, I said. Sometimes you destroy your opponent. Sometimes you just make sure they can't touch you again. This is the latter. Brooks didn't like it, but after a long pause he nodded. All right. We'll put them under cabin confinement starting now. By the time I stepped back into the hallway, the ship had gone quiet for the night. The corridor lights reflected in polished wood panels, the faint sway of the deck beneath my feet almost hypnotic. I passed their cabin on deck 5 as 2 security officers escorted Michael and Vanessa inside. Michael's glare could have bored holes through steel. Vanessa said nothing, just sat on the bed, back stiff, as the door shut and locked from the outside. When I returned to my suite, I stood for a long time on the balcony, watching the moonlight shimmer on the waves. For the first time since Emma's warning, I could breathe without the weight of danger pressing against my chest. The next morning, I found Emma at the kids' club breakfast buffet. She ran to hug me, nearly knocking the plate from my hands. Grandpa, can we go snorkeling today? Miss Lila says the reef here has parrotfish. Absolutely, Princess. Just you and me. What about Mom and Dad? Are they still seasick? I met her curious eyes. They need to rest for a few days. Doctor's orders. Her smile returned in an instant. So we get more adventures? Just us? Just us, I said, feeling a swell of something I hadn't felt in days. Peace. The rest of the day was ours. We snorkeled over coral gardens painted in every color of the rainbow. We spotted parrotfish nibbling at the reef, a sea turtle drifting lazily below us. Back on the ship, we played shuffleboard, read books in the library, and sat on the balcony with cups of cocoa while the sun set over the horizon. Every so often, I'd glance at the far side of the ship, where a certain cabin's curtains stayed drawn. Inside, my son and his wife were pacing in frustration, cut off from the rest of the world. It wasn't prison, but for them, it was close enough. The majestic horizon seemed like an entirely different ship once Michael and Vanessa were confined. Without their constant presence, the air felt lighter, the days brighter. Emma and I slipped into a rhythm that reminded me of summers decades ago when my own kids were young, except this time, I could focus entirely on her without distractions or demands for money. On the second morning after the confrontation, she woke me by tapping on my cabin door, already dressed in her swimsuit and clutching a snorkel mask. Grandpa, you promised we'd try the water slide before breakfast. We climbed to the top deck, where the sea serpent-shaped slide twisted down into a sparkling pool. She shrieked with laughter every time she hit the water, and I found myself laughing too, really laughing, not the polite chuckle I'd been giving people for months. Afterward, we explored the ship like a pair of detectives on assignment. We wandered into the art gallery, lingered over old maritime maps in the library, and even peeked into the glass-walled kitchen where pastry chefs shaped perfect chocolate seashells. Everywhere we went, crew members greeted us warmly. A few of them, no doubt, had heard whispers of an incident involving passengers on Deck 5, but no one asked questions. That afternoon, we sat at a sunny table on the aft deck eating ice cream as the ship cut through water so blue it looked unreal. Emma leaned on the railing and sighed. I don't want this week to end. Neither do I, Princess, I said. But the best part is that we'll have the memories forever. In quieter moments, I found myself reflecting on the past week, not just the danger, but the years leading up to it. All the times I'd written checks, bailed Michael out of another self-made crisis, convinced myself I was doing the right thing. Somewhere along the way, generosity had turned into enabling. Now, with Michael and Vanessa locked away, I could see it clearly. I wasn't just protecting Emma from a single terrible act. I was breaking a pattern that had gone on for decades. That evening, as the Caribbean sunset turned the water to molten gold, Emma and I stood at the rail watching flying fish leap in the ship's wake. Grandpa, she said softly, when I grow up, I want to go on a trip like this with my kids. Will you come? My throat tightened. If I'm still around, I wouldn't miss it for the world. She giggled. You will be. You're strong. I can tell. Her faith in me was humbling, and a reminder that I couldn't let my guard down once we returned home. On the last full day at sea, we attended a cooking class together, learning how to make fresh pasta. Emma's dough came out lumpy, but she beamed with pride anyway. Later, we watched a Broadway-style show in the main theater, her eyes wide with wonder as dancers whirled across the stage. That night, as she drifted to sleep in the extra bed in my cabin, something I'd arranged quietly with the staff, I sat on the balcony under a canopy of stars. The ocean stretched into black infinity, calm and deceptively peaceful. Somewhere below, Michael and Vanessa were finishing another meal delivered on a silver tray to their locked cabin. I imagined Michael pacing like a caged tiger, Vanessa scrolling endlessly on her phone, both stewing in their own resentment. They still didn't know what would happen when we docked in Miami. Truth be told, I wasn't entirely sure myself. I had no intention of ever letting them near Emma again, but whether that meant lawyers, restraining orders, or some quiet family severing, that decision could wait. For now, the important thing was that we made it through the voyage alive. More than alive, we'd claimed something precious from it, 3 days of pure, unbroken joy. As the ship hummed softly through the night, I realized that, for the first time in years, I was looking forward to whatever came next. Dawn broke over the Atlantic like a slow exhale, the first rays of sunlight stretching across the water and painting the majestic horizon in pale gold. I was already awake, sipping coffee on the balcony when Emma padded out in her pajamas. Is that Miami? She asked, rubbing her eyes. Not yet, I said, pointing to the faint silhouette of coastline on the horizon. But we'll be there in a few hours. Her face fell. I wish we could stay longer. I smiled. Me too, princess. But adventures have to end so we can start new ones. We spent the morning savoring the last bits of shipboard life. Breakfast in the main dining room, one last walk along the deck, even a quick stop in the gift shop where she picked out a tiny glass dolphin as a souvenir. I bought it without hesitation. By late morning, the skyline of Miami loomed large, glass towers glittering in the sun. The harbor bustled with tugboats and smaller cruise ships, horns echoing across the water. Passengers filled the corridors, dragging suitcases and chattering about flights home. I knew the real tension was happening several decks below. Michael and Vanessa's confinement would end only when the ship docked, at which point security would escort them off through a separate exit. Officer Brooks had promised me that much. At 11:15, as Emma and I stood on the observation deck watching the ship ease into port, Brooks himself approached. His presence was calm but deliberate, a man seeing through a promise. Mr. Harris, he said quietly, we'll be moving them off as soon as customs clears. They'll leave through the crew exit on the lower gangway. You won't have to see them if you don't want to. I nodded, but my stomach tightened. Thank you. Just make sure Emma doesn't see it either. You have my word. When we returned to my suite to collect our luggage, Emma noticed my distraction. You're thinking about something serious, she said, tilting her head. I knelt to zip her suitcase. I'm just making sure we have everything we need before we leave. Once we're home, life might be a little different. Different how? I paused, then chose my words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that mean they can't be together for a while. But you'll always have me. Her eyes softened. She reached out and took my hand. I know, Grandpa. The final call for disembarkation came over the PA system, the captain's voice cheerful as if this were any other voyage ending. Emma and I joined the slow-moving line toward the main passenger gangway. Outside, the air was warm and humid, the scent of salt and diesel mixing with the buzz of the port. As we stepped onto the pier, I glanced toward the far side of the ship where the crew gangway was lowered. 2 security officers flanked Michael and Vanessa, both of them in sunglasses despite the shaded walkway. Michael kept his head down. Vanessa scanned the pier with quick, darting eyes until she caught sight of me. She didn't say anything, but the curl of her lips said enough. I met her gaze for a second, then looked away. Emma tugged my sleeve. "What are you looking at?" "Just making sure our bags are still here," I lied. The customs process was mercifully quick. Once we cleared, we walked toward the taxi line, the Florida sun hot on our backs. My phone buzzed with a text, an unfamiliar number. "We'll talk. You can't keep her from us forever." I deleted it without answering. In the cab, Emma rested her head on my shoulder, her glass dolphin cupped in her hands. "Best trip ever," she murmured before drifting off to sleep. I stared out at the Miami streets rolling past and thought about what waited for us: lawyers, boundaries, and conversations I didn't want to have but knew I must. But those could wait. For now, we were on our way home. And we were safe. 3 days after we returned, the stillness of my house felt almost foreign after the constant hum of the ship. No music from the pool deck, no chimes announcing dinner service, just the quiet creak of old wood and the ticking of the clock above the mantel. Emma sat at the kitchen table, coloring while I unpacked groceries. She'd be staying with me for a while, according to the polite but firm conversation I'd had with Michael and Vanessa over the phone. The legal paperwork was already in motion to formalize it. I'd expected resistance, but the truth was, they didn't have much leverage anymore. The recording, the security logs, the sworn statements from Officer Brooks, they knew that if I pressed, they'd be facing far more than just losing access to their daughter. Still, Michael tried one last angle when we spoke. "Dad, you're overreacting. It was just talk, stress, money problems." "Stop," I said sharply. "It wasn't talk. And if you ever try to contact Emma without my permission, you'll see just how serious I can be." Silence on the line. Then a muttered, "Fine." After I hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a long moment, hands braced against the counter. This was the part no one tells you about, how doing the right thing can still feel like loss. Michael was still my son. But there was no going back. That evening, Emma and I sat on the porch swing watching the sun dip below the tree line. The cicadas were loud, the air heavy with the scent of honeysuckle. "Grandpa?" she asked softly. "Yes, Princess? Are Mom and Dad mad at you?" I took a deep breath. "They're upset, yes. But sometimes grown-ups make choices that aren't safe. My job is to keep you safe, even if it makes people mad." She considered that for a moment, then nodded. "I like living here. It's peaceful." A lump rose in my throat. "I like having you here." Later, after she was asleep, I went into my study and pulled out the small envelope I'd written on the ship, the one meant for her in case things went wrong that night. I slid it into the back of my desk drawer, not ready to throw it away. It was a reminder of how close we'd come to losing everything. I thought about calling Officer Brooks to thank him again but decided against it. Some debts are better kept in the heart than on paper. Over the next week, we built a new routine. Mornings were for schoolwork at the kitchen table, afternoons for walks in the park or trips to the library. Sometimes we'd cook dinner together, Emma perched on a stool stirring sauces while I chopped vegetables. Every so often, I'd catch her watching me with a look I couldn't quite place, part gratitude, part trust, part something deeper. Maybe she understood more than I realized about what had happened. One night, as we sat by the fireplace, she leaned her head against my arm. "You know what I think?" "What's that?" "That the best part of the cruise wasn't the slides or the dolphins. It was just being with you." I swallowed hard. "I feel the same way, Princess." We didn't talk about Michael and Vanessa again, but I knew the day would come when questions demanded fuller answers. When it did, I'd tell her the truth, but in a way that wouldn't break her heart. For now, we had peace. And that was more valuable than anything money could buy. One evening, I stood in the yard watching the sunset, the same emergency whistle from the ship resting in my pocket. I'd thought about tossing it, but decided to keep it. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder of how quickly life can change and how important it is to be ready. Emma's laughter floated through the screen door as she played with the neighbor's dog. The sound anchored me in the present, in the simple fact that she was here, safe. I'd won, though not in the way most people think of winning. There had been no courtroom victory, no front-page headlines. Just a quiet reclaiming of what mattered most. Sometimes, that's all the justice you need.